As you can understand, it's been an amazing learning experience for all of us working on this, and we're really grateful. For all the applicants, their time, and their effort. And the selection procedure is still ongoing, and we're hoping to conclude within October. But as I told you, Yojo is going to be a video-first newsroom, which means really what? Which means being intentional about covering news through video. And hopefully, we'll be experimenting a lot with that. So for the next discussion, let's ask, as audiences turn overwhelmingly to video, how are journalists across the world reimagining field reporting, investigations, and storytelling itself? So to discuss this, I want to call to the stage some amazing colleagues who I think love video as much as I do. So please welcome Matthew Cassel, award-winning journalist and independent correspondent, reporting across the Middle East and Europe. You've certainly seen his great work for The Guardian, BBC, Channel 4, and Vice News, among others. I also want to call to the stage Zach Toombs, founder and executive director of a nonprofit newsroom, Evident. After a decade at Scripps, supervising documentaries, Zach built Evident with a team from Vice and Al Jazeera. In its first year, Evident won the National Emmy, distributed via PBS, and reached over 10 million viewers on social platforms. And last but not least, my very good friend, Vania Turner, Greek-British documentary filmmaker and journalist. Her debut feature, Tak, screened at more than 25 international festivals. She has reported across the Middle East, Europe, and Sub-Saharan Africa for The Guardian, the BBC, the UN Refugee Agency, and she's also a Reuters stringer in Greece. So thank you all for coming. And I'll just ask right off the bat. So every Reuters digital news report tells us, and every other survey, people are watching video. Is this a moment for journalism and video? And I want to start off with Vania.
So thank you very much, Aggelos, for this invitation, and it's an honor to share the stage with you all. I think it's a really exciting moment for visual journalism. As you know, we're all on our phones. We're all hooked on these video-first platforms like YouTube and TikTok and Instagram. And we're seeing how video is sort of really connecting with people. You know, people want to be told these stories in a human and sort of easy way. I think the challenge is a lot of, you know, how do we, in that environment, maintain that nuance and that depth in an ecosystem that is sort of working on algorithms that are there to promote, and you know, they're not there to promote, I don't want to say serious content, but they're there to entertain. And so I think it's a really interesting time. I think the challenge is a lot of, you know, what we also saw in that video about redefining how we actually do video journalism. And what about our work is it that sort of maintains that uniqueness that makes it video journalism, so that it doesn't sort of blend into, so that it's still distinguishable as sort of original sort of video journalism, let's say. I'll just stop there, and then, yeah.
Zach?
I'm going to say yes. I founded a nonprofit for video journalism 6 months ago, so if I said no, that would be a really sad statement. But I do think this is a really important moment for video journalism, in part because it addresses so many of the problems that our industry is facing, and it stands up really well to those challenges that we've been talking about since the first panel on the stage on Thursday night. Think about the challenges that have been discussed here over the past couple days. The impact of artificial intelligence, how it's coming for our stories to summarize them. It's coming for our web traffic. We have challenges in reaching viewers and connecting and building trust with viewers. And we have challenges in reaching people who are avoiding news, who are tuning out. And so, video cannot and should not replace written text reporting, but video does stand up really well against those challenges and those problems. It is more resilient against AI summaries because it's not just about the information, it's about the experience. Video is about the experience. It connects with viewers in a way that feels human, as Vania mentioned, because often it's giving, especially, and Matt and I were just talking about this, when video gives the viewer a human face and a human voice that it can attach to our journalism, because even as the public trust in brands and institutions erodes, people still trust people at the end of the day. And it finds people, video finds people where they spend their time, which these days increasingly is on social media, and most of that time is with video. I can speak to the US statistics. In the US, the average adult spends 2 hours and 23 minutes per day on social media. Most of that time is with video. And some people may not like this, but I love the fact that we, through both short form and long form video on platforms like YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram, we can find people who aren't looking for us. We can find the people who aren't actively seeking out news when someone is even mindlessly scrolling through Instagram Reels or something, and they come across an evident media video. If we keep them there for even 15 or 20 seconds and they learn something from that, and especially if they follow it, if we're finding them because the algorithm suggested us or because one of their friends or someone they follow shared the piece, that's a huge win. Ultimately, those are the people that we want to reach, are the people that are not actively seeking out news, that don't have healthy, balanced news diets, and video can help us do that. So if you're not producing video, I highly encourage you to produce video. It doesn't have to be as expensive as you might think it is. You can do partnerships and collaborations. We do a lot of them with all sorts of outlets that don't have their own video teams. And if you are doing video, I encourage you to do more video and different types of video. So, and thank you so much for having us. I'm really excited to be part of this conversation.
Matthew.
Hi, everyone. So what's your question? Is this the time for video journalism? So, when I first started doing journalism 20 years ago or so, if you wanted to watch video journalism, you would have to do one of a couple of things. Wait for the news hour to come on in which that video is being played, or that documentary. Go to a cinema to see that documentary being played, or a film festival. Obviously, in the past 20 years, things have changed quite dramatically, where we all have a cinema in our pockets in which we can watch video journalism. And I think and I think Zach knows the numbers much better than I do, but much of the journalism that is being consumed these days is in a video format. So it has become very accessible. I would even say too accessible, in a sense that these days there's so much content being made, and not a lot of it, unfortunately, is quality, especially when it comes to journalism, because of, and this is, I think, something we're going to touch on throughout this conversation today, there's less and less resources in journalism, and to produce high-quality video journalism, it does cost money. And so a lot of what we're seeing are people, for example, giving their opinions, creating content, not actually doing in-the-field reporting as perhaps they once were. But yes, I hope we're going to talk more about that.
Let's grab a clip from one of your latest work, a latest series of reports for The Guardian. If we can take a look at Matthew's clip and come back and discuss about that.
We're here walking along the beach in Tel Aviv, and as you can see, there are people out, their families out, enjoying the sea as they should. It's peak summer. But I can't help but think when I'm walking along the coast here that if you follow the coastline exactly 60 kilometers south in that direction, you're going to reach Gaza. And there, rights groups are saying that there's a genocide and a famine taking place, which obviously feels extremely different to what we're seeing around us here in Tel Aviv.
location. I feel really safe here. On the regular day, you don't feel it, but then you are scrolling on Instagram and you see all of this. I'm very safe.
What do you see on Instagram?
All the hostages. I feel so sad.
You know, there are undeniably civilians who are suffering right now in Gaza, and rights groups are using the words like genocide and famine to describe the situation there. How much does that concern you, that civilians are suffering and dying?
I care about the people. I care about children all over the world. But first of all, we want the hostages back.
So this series of reports, as we were preparing for this conversation, you were telling me that that had overwhelming response, that brought you overwhelming response. It actually aired on YouTube, right? And there were short and longer pieces. So what, if you can explain to us what kind of a response and how it's different than other formats?
Firstly, apologies that you had to see me so big on that screen. Yeah, so we produced this because people have been, you know, I've been reporting from Israel-Palestine for a long time, but especially for the past 2 years, and people have been asking, I think, an important question, which is what are Israelis themselves, you know, saying about the situation in Gaza that much of the world considers a genocide and is talking about all the time. In fact, they're protesting. So what are people inside the belly of the beast, inside a place like Tel Aviv, saying about that? And that's what we set out to do with this Guardian video, is go and actually just talk to people quite randomly and get a sense of what people there felt. You know, there's been a lot of polls that have come out that people have been talking about, showing that amongst Israeli Jews, there's very little sympathy for Palestinians in Gaza. And we kind of set out to see how accurate those polls, those recent polls are. And what we found is that, yes, there is, in fact, quite sadly, very little sympathy among Israeli Jews for Palestinians in Gaza. The piece has gone viral. It's gotten a lot of attention. I don't know. My colleagues at The Guardian, you know, these are things that we can't always understand or predict. You know, sometimes I make videos that will have tens of thousands of views. Other times, like this one, I think it's over 3 million on YouTube now. So it seems to have struck a nerve. But again, I think with every Q&A we have during this conversation, I'm going to come back to the idea of original journalism. A lot of people have been talking about, even making videos about what Israelis are saying, what Israelis are feeling. When you actually go and talk to Israelis, do that kind of original journalism and publish it, I think it shows, the numbers show, that there's interest and people are going to watch it.
Yes, because there's great debate whether, you know, the algorithm will allow for news content, you know, on XYZ platform to rise up, to be able to reach people. And I think, Zach, you have some
I wanted
insight on that.
to pay a compliment to Matt and the team that worked on the video, because it does so many things right. I mean, I think it's no mystery that it was a very popular video, that it was well received, because The Guardian knows that their audience cares about this issue. And in the way you approached the video, I mean, what we saw, that was the open of the piece, right? That was the first minute or so. So there were a couple things in that. I mean, one, it was Matt's face, and he's immediately establishing himself as a guide for the viewer, and that kind of, you know, immediately building some personal trust with the audience. That's apparent. And then also, you know, the fact that he is on the ground, to the point that you made earlier, he's showcasing as a journalist that he went out in the field to tell this story. And so that's something different than just someone, you know, in their living room or their bedroom on like a webcam. And I think that's something we can do that speaks to a lot of the themes that we're hitting on, which is wherever we can showcase the in-the-field reporting and the original journalism that you're doing.
Matthew, you're somebody who has been doing this in the field for a long time, working intentionally for different formats. You've mentioned to me in our conversations about Ukraine and how you started shooting vertical video, for example. Is there something different of what you're doing, and how different it is now versus what it was? And does format even play a role?
I think you know, this could be a bigger conversation, and you know, the problem with legacy media. When I talk about legacy media, I mean, you know, mainstream traditional media outlets. I don't want to name them because I'm still working for some of them, but I think a big part of the problem as we moved into this digital era was a lot of these legacy media outlets were not embracing social media as they should have when it was starting to come out. And for a long time, you know, TV makes TV, and that's all they would do. And there were people within the organizations, myself included, who were arguing that's not enough anymore. You know, and if we're going out to do a story, why only do it for TV? Why not do it for Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, whatever? And so I forgot the original question, but
is what is different about you preparing or planning to go into the field to do those types of stories for different formats?
Right. So nowadays, when we live in this digital era where, as we've been saying, people are getting their news from different sources, I think we have to, as journalists, not only think about that one format. You know, we're not going to go out and just do print, just do TV, just do whatever the format is, but thinking about proper multimedia. So going out to tell that story, like what we did in Tel Aviv for The Guardian, and also think about how that can be repackaged, because it doesn't actually take, you know, any new kind of reporting. It can just be a different kind of edit, or a different, you know, preparing it for a different platform other than the original one. And just kind of thinking in a more multimedia way. And I think that those legacy media outlets are referred to, are starting to finally come on board with that idea.
I want to show Vania's clip and come back to discuss some of the counterpoints that Vania has made with regards to going into the field and be able to do multiple, you know, multiple versions of your reporting. It's okay. We got to your clip.
Evident Media, along with our partners at Bellingcat, have geolocated, mapped, and verified over 40 videos and photos from across the district. Many show strikingly similar tactics. Traffic stops that quickly turn into detentions, officers pulling workers off mopeds, and raids at known locations for immigrant laborers like Home Depot. Across 3 weeks in August, the Trump administration claims it arrested over 300 individuals without legal immigration status. The videos and photos we analyzed showed just a small snapshot of that, but give glimpses at patterns in how ICE is working with DC police. We organized these incidents into a few key categories. 22 of them, just more than half, show arrests of delivery drivers or tradespeople. 5 show other kinds of traffic stops that escalated. 2 videos show other kinds of coordination between federal agents and DC police. All of the 42 videos and photos we analyzed show federal agents operating in DC. In 21 of these, local DC law enforcement can be seen working side by side with them.
So this was not Vania's clip. This was an amazing excerpt.
That's right.
From, and I'm sorry for that, from an investigation by Evident, which I'll come back to in a second. I really want us to take a look at Vania's clip so we can stay on the field reporting side and then move into, so Vania's clip, if you can, thank you.
Even when I look at stone, at buildings, I see people. I see flesh, blood, nerves. That's what I see. There are 2 things to fear: ISIS and Al-Assad regime. I'm proud to say that I feared neither ISIS nor Al-Assad regime, but I fear shoulder dislocation.
So I played this clip because Vania has been making some counterpoints during our discussions about how practical or feasible it is for everyone to be able to work on multiple formats while on one story.
Yeah, sure. Okay, just to provide just a little bit of context on what we saw.
Khaldoun in Syria, right?
Yeah, this is so this is Yarmouk. It was shot in January of 2025 this year, and we met Khaldoun. Yarmouk was established in 1953. It's a Palestinian refugee camp that grew into this bustling sort of city where Palestinians and Syrians sort of lived side by side. And, well, it was bombed by the Assad regime, and then they were under siege for about a year, and no food came in or out. And Khaldoun we met on one of our days where we were reporting. We were actually there to do a story on water and how it was used as a weapon during the civil war in Damascus and the surrounding areas. But anyway, we ended up in Yarmouk, and at some point met Khaldoun. And he was one of the two doctors who was there, and in that scene he's looking at Palestine Hospital, and he's describing how he's still sort of having these images come back to him. He was training teenagers to help, who had no idea about anything medical, to sort of help out with treating people because people were dying of starvation and various other things. So anyway, just to come back to the multiple roles that we're asked to sort of play when we're out in the field reporting, which, as Matthew mentioned, it costs a lot of money. Like, for example, this was we went with Sonda International, which is founded by Santi Palacios and another colleague. So we had some of our expenses sort of paid, but basically just enough to break even. So the question I think that I'm sort of asking as a freelancer a lot is, how do we keep sustaining this important journalism that we're doing, whether it's putting ourselves in front of the camera, which I know is extremely important, and I have a bit of an aversion to that, but I know that I have to do it. When it costs so much, how do we sort of keep that sustain? How do we sustain that so that we can get these important reports that Matthew and other journalists are doing? So for me, when I'm on the ground, I'm someone who sort of loves to be behind the camera. I enjoy being quite invisible, and if I can completely blend in, that's like great with me. That doesn't mean that I don't establish a relationship with the person I'm interviewing, and I don't like to have that interaction show, but I don't want to be in front of the camera. I don't think that I was meant for that. Matthew is such a great, has such a great way of explaining the world to people. So I enjoy very much building that intimacy, and a lot of the time when we are in the ground reporting, to get someone to really open up, and I guess why I chose this clip was because I think it tells you a little bit about the character of Khaldoun. He's someone who's, he's very funny, and he's been through so much, and I think, he has this, I think, arrogance that put him through, helped him go through a lot, go through the siege. And I think that's what I love about video, is capturing those moments, capturing that intimacy. And I'm looking for that intimacy whether I'm covering a demonstration or whether I'm in, in someone's tent. I'm looking for those moments. Sorry. Sorry, am I going on? Okay, I'll finish up, sorry. But I guess I know that, we are obviously going through a crisis. It's an existential, I think, crisis for video journalism, for journalism in general. I don't know where I fit in, because I am someone who enjoys being behind the camera. And I know that the expertise that we have gained, not everyone can do our job. Not everyone can make someone feel safe, and not everyone, and there is obviously all the editorial standards and the vetting and all of that that's going, that's going on behind the scenes. I'll just finish up with this. Sorry for taking up so much time, but as you mentioned, I'm a Reuters stringer here in Greece. We did a really amazing sort of report that I really wanted to do for a long time, which was looking back at the migration crisis 10 years on. Anyway, me and photographer Luisa Guglielmaki went to Lesbos. We ended up finding, we went out with a fisherman that I knew 10 years ago. We saw a boat coming, which was amazing. I thought I was like 10 years back. We met a shipwreck survivor inside the camp. But there was so much support that we had from the Reuters newsroom to verify every single sort of like piece of information that we had. I couldn't have done that alone. That support, we do need that support that this legacy media, like Matthew is saying, provide. And I think, yeah, that's where I'm going to stop. Okay.
I think from all of those from this conversation and all the other conversations we've had on this subject, I don't think that anybody argues. I think to the contrary, what we're agreeing on is sticking to hard editorial processes and making your due diligence and actually doing the work, as Matthew was saying. Like if you get in the field, if you get there, and if you get the right way, and the right way is expensive, is being careful of your sources, being able to take the level of care for your own security and for everybody else. That's when your video will be important. So yes, all of these things are important, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that there is an opportunity for stories like this, and Matthew's work has shown that to us, and Zach's and your work. I know you've had examples where stories like that became bigger through social distribution, right? You've had that example happen to you.
Yeah, I mean, it has happened to me. I'm also someone who, like when I started 11, 12 years ago, I think I was sort of at that early stages of that shift where, we knew that traditional video journalism doesn't really work anymore. So I had to do different versions of the stories I was making. I was making an English version, I was making one for Instagram, I was making one for Facebook, for Twitter at the time. My concern is more about how you preserve that nuance and that depth in an environment where, what's being rewarded often, is, entertainment and speed. That doesn't mean that we can't make our stories, attractive to viewers. I'm wondering, when, and it's a skill set that you cultivate to sort of make that an interaction with someone or a story that you, like the ones that Matthew produces, to make that interesting for people. But I think because I'm seeing that it's becoming very much about who the person behind the camera is. I'm wondering where my space is in that, where the space is for, visual journalists who don't necessarily have that skill set. I'm going to stop because I think I should offer the floor to
I just want to turn to Zach for a second. We watched that clip from that joint investigation between Evident and Bellingcat. And we've been talking at this conversation about original reporting, which constitutes obviously either field reporting or investigative reporting. So what kind of space have you seen from productions you're doing with your newsroom? Is this new video era?
Yeah, so we do, a lot of the primary work that we do is correspondent-led documentary journalism, much in the style that Matt does. I chose this clip because it shows something a little bit different than what the two other clips show. This is an example of some of the things that we prioritize at Evident Media in the video journalism that we're producing. It's creative visual journalism. It uses creative and innovative techniques, in this case, open source reporting. This video, I think, did a great job of explaining our work, not just laying out what we know, but how do we know it, which I think is really crucial to communicate to audiences today, especially through video. And in video especially, I think we have the opportunity to bring the viewers along with us on what we call a journey of discovery, walking them through the reporting process. Even if we're not comfortable making the reporter part of the story, I think making the reporting process part of the story is a really good thing for us to do to build trust with audiences. This is also a collaboration. One thing I was thinking about as you were talking about the role that Reuters played in verifying and kind of like backing up your field work, I think a lot of that kind of work is being done through media partnerships and collaborations now. So, I worked at a news network in the US in corporate media for 10 years, and they had a certain way of doing things that was their way. I think part of the freedom of being independent media, and especially being in the nonprofit space, is just how collaborative everyone out there is, especially in this moment. And I think we need to work together. This was a collaboration between Evident Media and Bellingcat. Actually, the open source reporting that is in this video was all originally done by Evident's team and really checked by Bellingcat. But we've done a lot of other work where Bellingcat was driving the open source reporting. I managed a partnership with them at Scripps for 5 years, so we love Bellingcat. But also, we're working on a Frontline documentary currently. It's Frontline, The Washington Post, Bellingcat, and Evident. So I think we'll start seeing more of these sort of super teams of media partnerships where each newsroom can come in with its particular skill set and contribute that. And it doesn't have to hit the budget of the organization who's going to have their name on the documentary. Ultimately, what's produced is going to be useful to all those partners in different ways.
Okay, let me just ask. I'm listening to all of this, and I think, part of you setting up Evident and the work that's being done, there's a side to it that says, we've been talking about how expensive some of those things are and how they take time and effort and work. So who pays for that? What's happening on the financial side?
Zach, he's the only commissioning editor.
I've helpfully identified myself with this jacket today to talk about the business side of it. Well, I'll say first off that Evident Media is 6 months old, so we have not figured out everything or necessarily very much, but I can tell you what we're trying and what we're doing based on what we know and based on the really excellent board that we have, which is made up of people who were media executives at Vice, like Subrata Day, who was the EVP at Vice News, and other media executives and entrepreneurs. And the opportunity that they're seeing, that I'm seeing, is an all of the above strategy to paying for this work and to building more infrastructure for more video journalism, because there are so many talented documentary journalists and video journalists out there in this moment. We need to build more independent media infrastructure, separate from corporate media, separate from big business, as we've seen the pitfalls of that in the US very recently, of having our news tied in with those corporate interests. We need to build out a different infrastructure to support video journalism. And so when I say all of the above, I mean really our target is cash flow and money coming in that is really, the simplest breakdown would be half and half, 50% sort of mission-driven, more traditional business revenue, like licensing, which we have done some licensing deals with PBS and with a distribution company based in the UK. And memberships, eventually we'll launch a membership program, so we'll have revenue coming in that way, and then half philanthropy. And we are a nonprofit, and we started this as a nonprofit so that we would have more options for building this new infrastructure for video journalism.
Matthew, Vania, as independent?
Well, I mean, I think Matthew can sort of add to what I guess. I mean, it depends, I guess. I mean, it's like when you're a freelancer, you're either pitching and you're getting the organization to sort of pay, they accept your pitch and they're like, okay, yes, please go there and do this. Or in many other sort of situations, you just go, you either team up with someone, like for example, when I went to Syria this year, pay your own way, or have some of those expenses sort of paid out, and then you expense it sort of afterwards when you're in the field sort of pitching already. But it's not a very sustainable sort of way to sort of do that. The more you sort of establish relationships with editors, obviously, the easier that gets. If you're out of the game for a little bit, it can be sort of disorienting because, editors, might come and go. And so, for example, I was working on a film for about 4 years, and during that time, I accepted very little outside work. I was very, very lucky in that my film was fully funded. But that meant that as I'm sort of coming out of that, I'm having to sort of rebuild those relationships again. And it also means a lot of the time that you have to be based in a difficult place sometimes. I was based in Kenya before, and it was much easier for me to get work. This was just until the pandemic sort of hit, and then I had to come back to Athens because of visa issues and stuff. But so that is something that's like not the maybe you're not in that phase of life as you grow up. But yeah, if you're based in a difficult place or a place where a lot of news is sort of coming in and there's not that many journalists around, it definitely does make it easier to then pitch to maybe people like you, Zach. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Matthew?
One of my favorite expressions that I hear often in Greece, it's actually said in English, is no money, no honey. And these days it feels like there's very little honey in journalism. I've been doing this a long time, as I said, and freelancing, look, 6-7 years ago, and before that, I would have a number of clients who I could approach, when a big story like Israel, Palestine, Syria, a story like that's happening. That number has dwindled now, where I have maybe less than a handful of clients that I work with regularly. And that's why a lot of our colleagues, unfortunately, are no longer doing this. They've changed careers altogether. And I think people are now starting to have, those of us who remain, are starting to have real conversations about what we can actually do to make this sustainable. Because it's not really sustainable anymore to be a freelance, independent journalist. For example, I'm probably going to be launching a Substack, which I encourage everyone to subscribe to. I actually don't know how to do it or what it's going to entail, but I'm probably going to have to do something like that, just to find like alternate streams of revenue, because the traditional ways of making a living in this industry aren't really working anymore.
So we still need to figure that out. But and that's my last question, and I'll come to you in a second for your questions. If you wanted to give advice to a young journalist who they want to work in video, with video and video journalism, what would they say? What would you say?
I would say, first off, everyone in the industry, and I guess I'll speak specifically about the video journalism industry, should really be a student of this. I'm still a student of video journalism, and I go on YouTube and I see young online content creators, and I learn so much from the work that they're doing. And in many ways, they've mastered audience engagement in ways that traditional media have not. There was a great talk up here maybe an hour ago about that subject. And but I would say, other than just remaining a student of visual journalism and trying to always learn new techniques, I think specialization is good, and I often give that tip because it kind of cuts against what is taught at a lot of journalism schools, at least in the US. I mean, it's good to have a big picture view and to understand a little bit about different parts of the process, but once you've laid that foundation, picking something that you can specialize in, whether it's a technical craft, like becoming a great DP or a great director of photography or a great animator, or picking a subject that you're really going to be the expert on, or picking a place, that you're going to do really smart reporting from, that makes someone so much more competitive in a tough job market. because then you can offer something that other people are not offering. I think it's actually tougher when people come to me and say, I can do a little bit of everything. It's like I kind of need more specific skill sets because, especially with video journalism, this is a team sport and you need different specialties involved.
Well, a lot of what I'm hearing from colleagues right now is that indeed that they're having to do a little bit of sort of everything. So they're having to produce, they're having to write their own stories, they're having to present their own stories. So you do need to have all of those sort of skills. Obviously, having expertise really can sort of help you stand out. I think all of what Zach said is really important. I guess in the current landscape, what I'd say is, don't forget that even though we are in an age where we are having to sort of step in front of the camera, and I think it's important to remember why we do this work, and it is about trying to find the best way, and perhaps that is putting ourselves in front of the camera or rebuilding that trust. But never forgetting that we're there to sort of really amplify people's voices, and not have it be about us. Have it be about them. And I think what's important, and I didn't mention before, and I think this is what's really sort of democratizing maybe the space, even though it's making it more difficult for us to sort of go into a place, and is that local journalists, from places, for example, where we wouldn't necessarily be looking at pictures that don't have to do, for example, with violence or poverty, like places like Congo, for example. We're seeing that local journalists are finally having the ability to sort of have the storytelling power to really tell their own stories. And I think that's a very interesting time for us to be in. So I'd say have a really strong stomach, as we say in Greek. It's not easy, take risks, but also just remember it's not about you, I guess.
Matthew?
Advice for young journalists?
Yep.
Find a new career.
No.
No, I'm joking. No, seriously. Marry rich. No, I mean, I don't know. I mean, diversify. No, honestly, you guys said it. Learn, a diverse set of skills. I started as a stills photographer, then I started writing, and now I do a bit of everything, and I think that's how I've been able to survive for all these years. But it's bad out there, as we've said. So encourage your friends and family to buy subscriptions and pay for journalism.
Yes.
To put some money back into it, because we need it.
We do. Some questions? Can we have some microphones? Thank you.
Hi guys, my name is Marco. I'm a student and a freelance digital creator and a journalist. I applied for UJ as well, so I hope, Aggelos, you will watch my 90-second video statement. My question is for Matthew specifically, and if you were not publishing with The Guardian, if you were a freelance journalist, at his first experience, what kind of clips would you have chosen to publish from your project in Tel Aviv? And what would you have? What type of angle would you have chosen to be relevant without the coverage of an established media like The Guardian?
So this is where established media is important. If I understood the question correctly, just working in a place like Israel, Palestine. First of all, you need credentials to work there. So to go there as an independent journalist, if I was just a blogger or whatever, producing stuff for my social media, I need to get credentials. I need to get permission from the Israeli authorities to be able to travel there. And I mean, you can do it without, but it's advised that you should have these kinds of permissions. So that's the first problem. If I were to be, properly independent and not working with an established media outlet, is I would need permission and I would need the money to buy the plane ticket, to pay for the hotel, to work with the team that I work with on the ground there. So first of all, I need to have some kind of, at least in the way that I do things, I need to have a relationship with an established media outlet in order to be able to even go to that place to do that story. But then I'm pretty grateful with The Guardian in the sense like it was a very collaborative process in terms of we went out, we did the news gathering, we came back, and I was part of the edit. So we worked very closely, and I'm very happy with the end product that was out there. But then as well, I can come with my own ideas and suggest things that can be cut up and published on various platforms apart from YouTube or The Guardian's website. But again, it's part of a collaborative process, and I'm grateful that outlets like The Guardian encourage that.
Yes, or nine? Sure.
Hi, thank you for your time. My question is, do you remember the first opportunity you got to work in the industry? And how did you get your start in the industry, basically, to all of you?
Who wants to take this? Vania?
I can actually say it was Aggelos who gave me that opportunity. Actually, as an intern, I studied English literature, and so I just finished my degree, and I had a year where I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with myself. I knew I liked to write. I started off as a writer, and I interviewed with Aggelos for an internship in an investigative and current affairs show that he was an editor-in-chief at, and that was my first sort of my first time,
I think we should get an independent example for this question.
Well, so I grew up in a small town in central Texas, son of a Baptist minister. I didn't know any journalists growing up. I had no experience firsthand with journalism, but I was interested in this trade where you get to be around interesting things and interesting people. And I went to journalism school, and I started working I went to University of Missouri, maybe some other people here did as well, and started working for a digital video startup in the early days of digital video. So I started out with very short videos and just gradually was producing 5-minute videos and then 10-minute and then documentaries. So kind of built up from the short digital video space of like 15 years ago.
My answer might actually contradict the one I just gave a minute ago, because I went, my country was getting involved in various wars in the Middle East, and I went to the Middle East on my own. And just as a curious college student, and was taking photographs and writing emails to people back home. And through that, kind of organically realized I was committing an act of journalism, and over the years kind of became a proper journalist, let's say. But that curiosity that I had 22 years ago, I still try to keep at the core of everything that I do today.
Hi. I wondered whether you'd noticed a trend and what the advice is for young journalists nowadays. So about 10 years ago-ish, when I was still in a newsroom, and it was brought up that if you're working on a story, please can you also record it on your phone? And there was a kind of reluctance at the time for kind of new and adapting the traditional journalism, which made a space for people operating independently. So anyone with a smartphone and internet access could be the first one to report on a story without that editorial oversight and groupthink and working together, like you explained. And I wondered the extent to which that's been detrimental in polarizing and having those individual opinions, or, I don't know, some rogue ones that can be quite damaging sometimes, having the airtime because they got there first and cracked the algorithm.
Is the question about whether that is contributing to polarization? Okay, so it's a great question. I think that, so I was in the panel where they were going over the new Pew Research Center stats, and it showed that what people really value is honesty and authenticity. And thinking back to another panel, I liked the mentality of 404. They were speaking on the stage yesterday and talking about, objectivity is kind of like a classical value. I think we have to think really hard about what that means, because people do want authenticity. I think audiences want to know a little bit more about who's presenting the information to them. So our policy at Evident, and the policy that I had in place when I supervised documentaries at Scripps, which is like an old media, legacy media outlet for years, was that we should be fair and accurate always, and that we should try to be authentic to the story and to ourselves, but we have to tell it like it is. We should not practice both sides-ism. So I think as long as someone, whether it's like a newsroom decision or one person, getting on their phone for a short social video, if they're authentic, if they're honest, if they're fair, if they're demonstrating those journalistic values, I think that's what really matters.
Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. Hope you enjoyed the conversation.